Hi friends, today I'm so happy to officially launch my 25 Days of Christmas tutorial series for the year 2020. The first project of this series is going to be a large card with the double shaker window, and it's all studded with pearls. Actually, I have used over 500 of those. But let's start from the beginning. To create a card base, I'm going to need 2 A4 sheets of cardstock, and I'm using the stone cardstock by Creative Expressions, which is the light gray color. One side of this sheet of cardstock is 8¼ inches, so now I am positioning it into the paper trimmer and trimming the other part to 6¼ so the panel is going to be 8¼ by 6¼ inches, which is going to be the size of our card. Now I'm taking another sheet, but this time instead of cutting it at 6¼ mark, I'm going to score it at 6¼ mark, and I'm using the scoring board to do that. By the way, the tools and supplies I am using are going to be listed down below in the description box, as well as on my blog. Now I am trimming off extra cardstock, leaving about ½ inch strip next to the crease line. And then I'm going to fold that crease line just like this. Both halves of my card base are now the same size, and all I have to do is to stick them together. Here is my favorite way of doing that. I'm applying the double-sided tape first, and then I'm also adding some liquid glue at both sides of it. The tape grabs onto cardstock instantly, and you won't need to hold down the cardstock and wait for the glue to dry. And the liquid glue, since it's really strong, is going to ensure that the cardstock is not going to come off over time. So it's super simple, even primitive, but it works. Now let's create a shaker frame. I'm going to use the 3 largest dies from Card Builder die set by Paper Discovery. First I used the largest die only, it's 6 by 8 inches, to create this panel out of vellum. Next I have used the plain outlines only to make this simple frame out of gray cardstock. And finally I have used all 3 dies, insert included, to make this trellis pattern frame out of white cardstock. I'm going to use a plain black frame as a background for a Lacey white frame. You can use the spray adhesive if you like it. I'm just grabbing my liquid glue bottle since I always have it at hand. I'm applying the glue along the outlines first, and then I'm squeezing the bottle and kind of dragging it along the middle of the frame, and this way some small amount of glue is going to be applied at those tiny intersections. And then I'm just lining up the corners and the sides carefully and sticking down the white frame on top of the gray one. I'm placing the frame over the vellum panel, but I'm not sticking it down just yet. I'm only using it as a guide to position the circle window. For the window itself, I'll be using the 2 largest circle dies from Delicate Pearly Swirl die set, and this one is by Card Making Magic. It's been designed by the amazing Christina Griffiths. I'm kind of forming a wreath with these 2 circles, and I want it to be narrower on one side and wider on the other. And then I'm only going to tape down the inside circle. I'm going to remove the largest circle as well as the frame, and then I'm going to sand this panel through the die cutting machine. So this is the result that we should get at the moment. It's a vellum panel with a circle opening. And now I can finally stick down the frame onto the vellum panel. This time I prefer the double-sided tape because too much liquid glue can cause vellum to warp. The next step of the process is adding a sentiment. I'm positioning my panel over the card base and I'm going to tape it down to fix it in place. This way I will know exactly where I should attach the greeting. The sentiment itself is from Elegant Room die set by Paper Discovery and it goes Merry Christmas. I've die cut it out of white cardstock and now I'm going to position it inside the circle window. Once I'm happy with the placement, I'm going to stick it down again using the liquid glue. It's also very convenient to hold down the die cuts with the acrylic block until the glue dries. And now I can remove the washi tape, take the panel off the card, and I'm going to add more elements to it. To finish off the wreath, I'm going to use this beautiful specialty cardstock by Tonic Studios that is called Silver Silk. I'm going to take the same two circle dies and positioning them the similar way that I did on a card, narrower on one side and wider on the other. Then I'm taping both dies down and I'm going to send them through the machine. The die cuts we're going to get are super intricate. They literally look very much like real necklace because they are as thin as the real thread. But for this project, it's that inner space between the two circles that we are going to use. I went ahead and die cut a few of each circles out of white cardstock, and it's those white pieces that I'm going to use. Now I'm going to attach the smaller circle inside the silver frame. So I'm flipping over both pieces and I'm going to position this frame inside the circle right where it belongs, and then I'm going to use the washi tape to hold it in place. I am tearing off really small pieces from the roll and I'm placing them over the two frames, and this way they're going to be held together. If some tape happens to be sticking out, you can just trim it down with the scissors later on. I'm going to attach a lot of pieces all around the outline, and this way I'm going to hold the frame in place. Now I'm going to apply a really small amount of liquid glue behind the frame, not to cause the warping of the vellum, and I'm sticking down the frame just around the window. Then I'm going to attach a larger beaded circle die cut around the wreath. So again, I'm applying some dots of liquid glue behind the beads and I'm sticking it down onto vellum. The next frame is covering the circle opening with acetate. To do that, I'm flipping over the panel and I'm going to place a piece of acetate over the window, and then with a marker I'm tracing the outline of the acetate so that I will see where I should cut. I'm tracing it closer to the outer edge. This way I will have enough space to apply the adhesive. And then I'm going to cut out this circle with the scissors. Then I'm applying the double-sided tape around the inner edge of the circle at the wrong side, and I'm sticking down that piece of acetate. This way we're going to get a vellum panel with the acetate circle window. These delicate swirls with the beads on them are also the part of delicate Pearly swirl die set. I've die cut them out of white cardstock and now I'm going to play around with them and position them close to the wreath. And then, as always, I'm going to stick them down with some liquid glue, and this way they will be fixed in place. At this point you can totally leave the wreath as is, but I have decided to add more beaded circles to it to make it look like a multi-layered necklace. Because those die cuts are so super intricate, they are really easy to shape so that you can make them smaller or larger. This time I'm using the smaller circle and I'm clipping it like this, and then I'm going actually to shape it, and this way it's going to seem larger than it is. Then I'm going to use the larger circle and I'm attaching it the same way. I'm opening it up and I'm creating a larger circle than the wreath itself. Now I'm adding even more die cuts. You can overlap the strings if you like. I'm really going for that necklace look. Now when my panel is ready, I'm gonna be adding some foam tape to it to create a shaker card. I'm cutting alongside the tape to make it thinner, and notice that I have removed all liners from the tape, and this way it becomes more pliable and I can apply it around the circle. You can do just one layer of foam tape if you're not planning to add a lot of sequins, but for this project I will be doing 2 layers. Make sure to leave no gaps, this way the sequins are not going to escape. When I'm done with the circle, I'm also applying 2 layers of foam tape all around the rectangle frame, and this way I'm going to have a shaker window inside the shaker window. And now it's time to fill in the shaker frame with sequins, but there is a trick to that. This time, instead of pouring the sequins onto this part, which is the frame, we're going to add them onto this part, which is the card base. To fill in the circle window, I'm placing the sequins right onto the sentiment, and I'm using some snowflake-shaped sequins as well as tiny silver stars and maybe some clear ones too. And to fill in the vellum shaker window, I'm placing the sequins at the bottom part of the card. This time I'm also adding some larger and darker sequins, since they're going to be muted down by the vellum. This time I am making sure that I'm not placing any sequins close to the edges, so that they will not get under the foam tape. And now I can place my frame over the sequins and seal them inside. Since my panel is not the same size as the card base, it's a bit smaller, it would be really hard to line up both pieces if I were doing it the other way around. But since I'm placing the frame on top of the sequins, it's quite easy to do. Let's check out how the shaker elements work, and they work just fine. And at this point you can totally leave this card as is, but I couldn't help adding more embellishments to it, and this time I'll be using the half pearls of different sizes. I have lots of pearls of different sizes, they are quite inexpensive, and I'm going to add 1 pearl onto each bead on the die cut. The technique is quite simple. I'm squeezing out 1 tiny drop of glue onto each of the beads on the paper, and then I'm using the pickup pencil to position the beads in place, and they stick down perfectly. Now I'm going to take my time and just keep attaching all the beads one by one. Now when my necklace wreath is all filled with pearls, I think I have beaten my own record as for the amount of pearls I have added to one project. However, I couldn't stop here and I decided to add even more pearls onto the frame. I'm using the tiniest pearls I have in my collection, and I'm attaching them onto each intersection of the trellis pattern until I have all the frame filled with pearls. And this is what the finished project looks like. Although it's pretty monochromatic, it has a lot of texture, you can see different materials, it has some interactive elements, and look how the pearls stand out. I really hope you enjoyed this tutorial, and if you would like to watch the videos from previous years, you will see the links to them at the end of this video. The project number 2 is coming out soon, so stay tuned and subscribe to my channel if you haven't already. I wish you all a wonderful day and hope to see you guys next time. Bye bye!